Hey, I'm Zealous Plays. Welcome back to the Alpine Mountain Zoo. Making a rare return to Saturdays on this channel. If you're expecting Jurassic Northwest, then that will be back next week, don't worry. Today, we're going to be starting a new area in the zoo, the Amur forest. It's going to be one of the first areas that you see just past the entrance, and it's going to begin here. And in this episode, we're going to be starting it with a sizable habitat for the Siberian tiger. We're also going to be making a return to our beaver habitat, more on that later. But first, we're going to take this bridge that we built for the beavers and use it to create the elevated walkway, which is going to get guests into the Amur tiger habitat. Yes, I'm going to call them the Siberian tiger and the Amur tiger interchangeably throughout this episode because they are one and the same. The game calls them the Siberian tiger. They tend to be referred to as the Amur tiger these days, and I'm easily confused. So this whole habitat is based on a real one at the Highland Wildlife Park in Scotland. It is quite simply my favourite tiger habitat that I've ever seen, and I have seen quite a few. You go up on a wooden walkway, which is beautifully designed to work equally well for wheelchair users as well as able-bodied people, and it gives you a brilliant view into two different tiger habitats. And we are going to have two habitats here, one for a male, one for a female, and we're going to design them with access between them that can be opened so that the tigers can be together when we want them to be and separate when we don't. It's going to be beautiful and forested, and if we can get this right, when you stand in one of the two viewing galleries that we're going to have here, you'll just be looking at a little slice of tiger life. When I went to the Highland Wildlife Park and saw this habitat, it was full of tigers. The female had just had cubs, and it was just like watching a little tiger family go about their business. A really magical moment, and I'm going to try and recreate that here. And now we have a chunk of the walkway built. Let's take a look at it. Happy with that, and we can use this to create almost all of the guest paths, so let's get started with those. Firstly, we're going to use the shift and control keys to raise a path to just below the level of this, and then get it to slope down to meet the path that comes out of the entrance area and into the Amur forest. And then we're going to take some of the wooden planks from the top of it and use those to create a slope that will roughly match the path that we're going to place in and would enable people to get up here in wheelchairs as well as on foot. When I was researching this, the Highland Wildlife Park spent a very long time creating all the raised walkways in their zoo in conjunction with numerous different wheelchair users to make sure everything was accessible and all the slopes were comfortable to use. And whilst I suspect this slope is probably a little steeper than it would be in real life, we should certainly get that impression when we look at the finished habitat here. It's always really important when you're creating a sloped path to make sure that all the vertical pieces are still vertical and not slanted. It's only the top bits that you want to be on a slope. Once we've got that all tidied up, then we can start placing the paths in, and there we go, that's looking really nice. We're going to extend this walkway down towards this marker here, which is where the habitats are going to be, and then to make sure everything fits together smoothly, we're going to be building the paths on the grid. So we will align to the grid to create the first viewing gallery there, and we'll create a second one there, and then we'll have a diagonal path going out here, so that people can choose which one they go into. And there's also going to be a little peek into the tigers on this path as well through one of the fences. Once we got those in, we'll do another sloped path here to join it on to the rest of the area, because we don't want people to have to go to the tiger habitat if they've already seen it or whatever. And now we've got everything on the grid, we can just take the one piece of the flat raised walkway that we created and use that to fill in all the paths, and this is going to fit together seamlessly. And when the people are walking on it, their feet won't be disappearing into the floor or anything like that, except for the slopes, which is going to be tricky, but we'll do that as well as we can. We'll do the same thing on this diagonal path as well, and then once we've got that in, we'll create the slope down to the end using the same technique we did as the beginning. And there we go, that's all the guest paths in, and now we can move on to the viewing gallery. These are going to be fairly simple shed-like structures that give you a really good view into the tigers without distracting you from them. It's not about the architecture here, it's about you walking down a path with trees on either side, trees growing over the top of the path, really atmospheric, and then suddenly you're in this little hut and you've got the perfect view into a tiger habitat. So we're going to make it using this big glass panel and then just a few planks really. We'll have the planks around the side to define the window, and then we've got another one down here which will be kind of like a ledge that people can lean on, and then we'll fill in underneath it with some smaller planks just to make it look nice and cover up that glass. If you're enjoying this video, by the way, don't forget to hit the like button and make sure you subscribe if you're new to the channel. It's always a big help, thank you. Now we've got that one piece done, we can start turning it into the viewing gallery. We're going to have three of them next to each other in a line here, and we just adjust the spacing until that perfectly fits in over that path. And then we'll have one more on either side, and then we'll use a bigger piece of wood to provide an end to that part of the building, get that to the right colour, And once we've got it in exactly the right position, we'll place it down and we'll have it on the other side as well. And then we'll take some more of the planks and use those to fill in the floor till we get this looking seamless. And then we can build the roof. So we're going to use this wooden piece here, which I'm not sure I've ever used before, but it just kind of fit perfectly for this. We're going to have it as an angle so that it looks a bit more interesting and so that water would run off it when it's raining. And then finally, we will cover it up with one of these corrugated pieces, give it a bit more texture, and just because that's what they have in the real habitat anyway. This isn't an exact recreation, but it will be very close to the Highland Wildlife Park's habitats when it's finished. We'll get some signage in here as well. This is a slightly modified version of one of Lion's signs that I've adjusted so you can use just the corner of it. That looks really cool like that. We get that into the right position, and then we can just delete the right-hand side of all these art shapes that it's created out of, and there we go. We've got like a quarter sign. I really like those. Use those wherever possible. And then we will fill in the kind of legs of this structure with some more boards. And there we go. That is the viewing gallery pretty much done. I'll do a little bit more signage later. Let's do a little bit of work on the entrance to the area itself. The Amur forest area is going to be pretty small. It's essentially an excuse to have a Siberian tiger habitat for the first time ever in this game, or on this channel at least, and they are definitely going to be the stars of it. But behind the two tiger habitats is going to be another smaller habitat that the guests will walk past to get down to the Lost Wilds. So this is pretty simple, one of Ricey's fonts, some concrete, some decals. Wasn't sure about the stripes and the tiger, but I think we get away with it. With that done, we're going to take a quick detour to the beaver habitat. I mentioned in the last episode I wanted to make some improvements to the beaver lodge, so as you can see we've got a lot more brown branches on there which give it a much more realistic look. And thanks to one of you guys in the comments, Irish Jets, who pointed out that a wooden habitat gate in a beaver habitat was a really bad idea, so that is now made from metal. On to the tigers. So we're going to start building the fences here, and the recommendations in the Tiger Husbandry Manual is that the fences for a tiger habitat need to be at least 5 meters high with an overhang. The ones at the Highland Wildlife Park seem to be even taller than that, and I really like the way they were so tall they were visible over the top of the viewing galleries. So we're going to make some really tall fences here using some of these mesh pieces, and then we're going to use some metal poles as well to make them look stronger, like they would withstand a tiger. Now we'll get quite a few of these poles in, both vertically and horizontally, to really make them look strong. These are very close to the real ones, so they should certainly be good enough to hold a tiger. And once we've got one of them, we'll position them just next to the viewing gallery. We'll make a modified one for the viewing galleries where there's no mesh where the glass in the gallery is, so that the guests get an unimpeded view. And then we'll use the original one that we made to create the rest of the habitat. We got some really interesting terrain going on here, kind of halfway up a hill. I really like the slightly higgledy-piggledy look that you get with each one being at a different height. Gives a really interesting silhouette to the habitat when you're walking up to it. And as you can see, they're so tall that they stick out above the viewing gallery. And once we've got the last one in, if we take a look at it, there we go. We've got the first of the habitats. This is the females in. And then we'll simply do the same thing again to create the males. And then we're just going to start putting some trees in. So one of the important things to consider with habitats like this is not to have really tall, really thick trees right next to the fences, because if they come down in a storm, they can knock down the fence and suddenly you have tigers on the loose, which is not what you want. So we're going to have some smaller birch trees, which are pretty light, near the fences, and then all the bigger ash and things like that will be concentrated in the middle of the habitat. And then we're going to add in something to really make this habitat shine, which is waterfalls, a river, and a couple of ponds. We've got one of the large waterfall pieces sunk into the ground here, and now we're going to go in with some of the tiger rocks and cover that up. So I'm mainly just using one of the smaller rocks here with random rotation all turned on, and every time you place it down it changes it slightly, and that means I can kind of look at it and then decide where that one shape would be best to go. I like to do it like that rather than trying to get each one to go in a line. We just use each one where we think it looks best, and I think that gives you a really natural shape, even though it might take a little bit longer doing it that way. Once we've got this last piece in place, which we are going to do a little bit more manual work on, there we go. Good looking waterfall, and now we can start putting the rest of the water in. We'll dig down slightly into the terrain and then just carry that across, and you can see we've got the beginnings of a little stream here, which looks really nice. So we'll widen that a little bit, get it a bit more tiger-sized, and then we'll open it out into a pool at the bottom, which will be a lot deeper, so they can actually have a proper kind of splash around and even swim in. And once we've got a shape that we're happy with, we'll fill it back in with the water, and there we go. It's deep enough for some splashing, no diving or anything like that, which should definitely keep them cool on hot days. And then we'll join that up into the next habitat with a second waterfall, Do the same thing again in here, and we've got a nice little water course there. A few more rocks and that'll look realistic. And speaking of rocks, we're going to take the river rock arrangement we've been using for so long now because it's so good for things like this. We just drop this one blueprint in loads of times all around the water, delete the bits we don't need, and there we go. Very natural looking water course, and we can move on to the climbing. We're going to build a climbing platform that is very much in keeping with the overall vibes of this habitat, i.e. made out of natural materials and nice and simple so it's not distracting from the tigers. Should be something that just melds away into the background. You're not looking at the climbing frame, you're looking at the tiger sitting on top of it. So we're going to use some square planks and some logs as well. Get a nice arrangement and then cover it up with one of the best pieces in the game, the African hut base. By the time this goes out, you will have seen the trailer, of course, for Planet Zoo 2. I cannot wait to see what new pieces we're going to get and what things are going to become our new favourite piece that we end up using in almost every habitat we build. Really excited for that. We're actually using a new piece, or new by Planet Zoo standards anyway, in this build, which is this little fence gate catch, I think it's called, from the America's Animal Pack, just to give a bit of texture to that climbing board there so the tigers can climb it easier. And by the way, if you've been on holiday in a cottage with no Wi-Fi or living under a rock, or somehow you haven't seen the new Planet Zoo 2 trailer, then I've got a full video on the channel with my breakdown of every piece of information contained within that trailer, which I would highly recommend you watch if you haven't seen it yet. Let's get on to some rock work. So as the terrain raises at the end of this habitat here, which is the males, I want to get some rock work in there to meld that together and make it look really natural. We'll get some of our piles of rock I think we built for the hyenas in there, and then modify the terrain so it all fits together seamlessly. And then we'll do a little bit of work on the edges of the stream that runs through both these habitats to make sure that all looks seamless. And then we can move on to the foliage. So we got our plant palette way back at the beginning of the zoo for all sorts of alpine plants that we wanted to use. So we'll be using that again here. We've got some custom plants, some larger bushes, a few little nettles and things like that. Lots of different things that we want in this habitat. So we've got a big area to fill, and it's not going to be filled with huge climbing frames or giant rock canyons or anything like that. It's going to be pretty simple, and we want it to look realistic. So making heavy use of the arrowwood bushes, which are one of the best plants for filling in areas, especially in temperate or tiger zoos like this. One last plant in here, and then we'll take a look at where we are from our new Amur Forest drone cam. Looking good. And then we'll drop in some enrichment for them. We'll get one up on the climbing frames to make sure they go up there. We'll get a blood scent marker down near the viewing gallery to encourage them close to here, and just cover that up with another arrowwood bush. And then we'll move on to this. How do we get tigers from one habitat to the other? Well, we're going to build a tiger-sized door and make sure they can actually get through it. It's going to be pretty simple. We'll be using some plaster panels. We'll create our own metal sliding doors, get something exactly like you'd see in a real zoo, which the staff can open or close to determine which part of the area the tigers are in. Mixing tigers is a very, very difficult process in zoos. As well as being enormously powerful like you might expect, they are also very solitary. I've just come back from a zoo in the Netherlands where they had a similar setup to this, so 2 habitats that could be joined when necessary. They'd had, I believe, a female in there for quite some time, and they finally secured a breeding male from the European breeding program. They moved the male into his side of the enclosure. He was there for a long time. They waited for the perfect possible moment when the female was in season to introduce them. Before they introduced them, they swapped their habitats, so the male lived in the female's habitat and she lived in his for a couple of days, just so they could get completely used to each other's smells. And then finally, at the perfect moment, they introduced them to each other, and the male immediately killed the female. And this is one of the world's top zoos, a program that took months to put together, and it still resulted in one of the tigers being killed. It is just so difficult to breed these and conserve them. Happily, in Planet Zoo, we are definitely not going to have that problem at the Alpine Mountain Zoo, and all we need to do now is put a keeper gate in, and our habitats are complete, and we can check them out. We'll enter the area from the start of the zoo again, so we can take a look at our sign. This little bit's not completely finished yet, and then we'll make our way down the raised walkway here, get our first view of the habitat, and then it's time to add the tigers. Here comes the female into her side of the habitat. This is the view from the viewing gallery. Obviously, I had to make the tiger doors bigger so they'll actually get through it. That is always the way with Planet Zoo, and here she is. I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like the Siberian tiger model is better than the Bengal tiger model. Never really noticed before, but then this is the first time I've ever actually used them. And here's the male stalking around his side of the habitat. Looking very impressive, although not as impressive as the tigers in Planet Zoo 2. Oh my god, they look amazing. Here's an aerial shot. And then finally, we'll take a look at them using their climbing frame. They are combined at the moment. Maybe we'll get some little tiger cubs before the end of the series. Who knows? Let's take a look at where we started today. And this is where we are now. That is a huge chunk of this area done already. And as you can see here, the Alpine Mountain Zoo is now almost complete. In the next episode, we're not only going to finish the Amur Forest, we're going to finish the Alps and the Lost Wilds as well. We've got 3 new habitats to build. Normally villa habitats and things like that I do off camera for the tour. With this being a smaller zoo, I figured we're going to do it all in one episode so that you guys can see that. So I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.